World War II, a rather decrepit Adolf Hitler decorates child soldiers outside his infamous bunker in war-ravaged Berlin in 1945. But what is the story behind the footage? Who were the young Hitler Youths, and what had they done to merit such attention? Hitler had arrived in Berlin for the last time on the 16th of January 1945 aboard his armoured train, the Führerbunker. He had come from his last Western Front headquarters, the Adlerhorst or Eagle's Eyrie near Siegenburg, after masterminding the Ardennes and Nordwind offensives against the Americans. Both offensives had run out of steam, and Hitler had been faced by a new threat in the east, which required his immediate attention. It was becoming clear that a huge Soviet winter offensive was about to commence, and indeed on the 18th of January it was unleashed. In a month's hard fighting, the Red Army advanced within 100 kilometers of Berlin, but then unexpectedly halted while Stalin attempted to capture territory in Austria and eliminate remaining German forces on his flanks in Prussia and Pomerania. The delay in the assault on Berlin gave the Germans a short breathing space to improve the capital's defences and shore up the Eastern Front with whatever forces that could be found, including teenagers and even children. Though the Soviets were still some distance from the city, Berlin was already a shattered ruin, having been pounded mercilessly by huge British and American air raids for years. Such were the number and frequency of the raids that Hitler eventually gave up sleeping in the badly damaged Reich Chancellery, and in February 1945 began spending his nights deep underground in the Führerbunker beneath the Reich Chancellery garden. He would continue to work in the Chancellery during the day until mid-March 1945, when he moved almost permanently into the bunker. The Hitler Youth, under its one-armed leader Arthur Axmann, was to play its part in the defense of Germany, and boys as young as 12 were in action against the Red Army all along the crumbling Eastern Front, mostly employed in supporting roles as messengers, couriers and supply personnel. When the Battle of Berlin got underway, many Hitler Youth units entered full combat alongside the remaining Army, Waffen-SS and Volkssturm Home Guard units. Much confusion surrounds the famous film of a decrepit Hitler decorating a group of Hitler Youths in the Reich Chancellery garden. Many have claimed the film is from the Battle of Berlin in April 1945. This is untrue. The film was shot on the 20th of March 1945 and broadcast in remaining cinemas shortly afterwards as part of a Deutsche Wochenschau military bulletin. It was, however, the last surviving film footage taken of Hitler, the last time the German people would see their leader before his death the following month. Another awards ceremony was held on the 20th of April, Hitler's last birthday, also at the Reich Chancellery, but this was not filmed or photographed. The Hitler Youths in the film were not from Berlin. Instead, they were young soldiers who had distinguished themselves in action elsewhere and were selected for propaganda reasons to represent the Hitler Youth at a medal ceremony. At this stage, the Soviets had not advanced on Berlin, so the city was not a battleground yet. Hitler's appearance was carefully stage-managed, as he had deteriorated physically in quite dramatic fashion. This film, shot 9 days earlier, is Hitler's last visit to the front. He visited General Theodor Busse's 9th Army headquarters at Schloss Freienwalde on the Oder River. The uncontrollable shaking in his left hand is clearly visible. His mental faculties were not impaired, and he remained as sharp and demanding as ever. But he was certainly not capable of any more of the loud and expressive public speeches he was once famous for. Indeed, his last broadcast speech had been made on the 30th of January 1945, marking the 12th anniversary of his assumption of power in 1933. The German public never heard him speak again. But Hitler had a crutch to lean on, and this crutch was his energetic and faithful propaganda minister, Dr. Joseph Goebbels, who now performed the speeches needed to galvanize the public to continue the war. Goebbels, who was also Gauleiter of Berlin, visited the Oder front, right up to the frontline trenches, to show solidarity with the troops anxiously awaiting the final Soviet drive on Berlin.
In der vorgeschobenen Stellung einer Sturmgeschützabteilung.
It was while on a visit to the recently recaptured town of Lauben that Goebbels was famously filmed congratulating a very young soldier. The Silesian town of Lauban, now in Poland, was the site of a fierce tank battle and the last German victory of the war. The Silesian industrial area was vital to the Germans. Lauban was on the front line during the massive Soviet assault that commenced on the 1st of March 1945. German panzer forces counterattacked and at Lauban knocked out about 30 Soviet tanks. The German counterattack ground to a halt on the 6th of March, but Lauban was one of several towns and villages recaptured. In total, during the short campaign, the Red Army lost 162 tanks and 159 assault guns, against only 10 German panzers destroyed, though the German infantry suffered heavy losses. The Soviets learned to not underestimate the Germans' ability to hit back, even so late in the war.
Der SS-Unterscharführer springt vor, die Besatzung eines angeschossenen T-34 unschädlich zu machen.
Wilhelm Hübner was a 16-year-old Hitler youth who had distinguished himself in the heavy fighting at Lauban. Attached with his unit as messengers to the Führer Grenadier Division, Hübner had repeatedly braved Soviet fire to carry messages from headquarters to frontline battalions. He also frequently filled a wheelbarrow with Panzerfausts and provisions and took these to the front lines, constantly under fire. Hübner was singled out for his conduct, and when Dr. Goebbels visited the shattered town on the 9th of March, Hübner was decorated with the Iron Cross Second Class by the town's battle commandant, and then personally congratulated by Goebbels, carefully filmed of course for propaganda purposes. Hübner was ordered to be flown to Berlin, one of 20 Hitler youths of all ages, to meet Hitler himself at the Reich Chancellery. On arrival in Berlin, Hübner and 19 other Hitler youths from towns all along the Oder front were given a large breakfast and received new clean uniforms. Driven to the Reich Chancellery, they were lined up beneath Hitler's office window in the gardens on the 20th of March and briefed by Hitler Youth leader Arthur Axmann. Axmann told them to be at ease and not to greet Hitler with the Nazi salute. Then Axmann decorated each of them with the Iron Cross Second Class, and several also received wound badges in black. Shortly afterwards, Hitler appeared with a large retinue of staff officers and aides, and walked slowly up to the assembled boys. He then shuffled down the line, Axmann introducing each boy in turn, with whom he exchanged a few words, shook hands and patted cheeks. The youngest boy on the parade was 12-year-old Alfred Czech, a farmer's son from Goldenau in Silesia. He had made 2 trips under enemy fire using his father's horse and cart to retrieve wounded German soldiers, rescuing 8 on the first trip and 4 on the second. He was ordered to Berlin to meet Hitler and to receive his Iron Cross. Standing beside Czech was 16-year-old Erwin Scheidewig. At the conclusion of the short ceremony, the 20 boys trooped down into the Führerbunker for lunch with Hitler and Eva Braun and his staff, where the boys recounted their war stories. Hitler was particularly taken with Hübner's story, as he himself had been a frontline messenger in World War I, and drew comparisons. At the conclusion of the special lunch, they were each given one wish before being returned to combat. Czech asked for and got an accordion. Czech was unable to return home to Goldenau as it was occupied by the Soviets soon afterwards. He was sent to the Sudetenland and there shot through the lung in combat. After recuperation and imprisonment, he returned in 1947 at the age of 14 to his home. He discovered that his father had been killed by the Soviets when he was serving in the Volkssturm, shot in the neck. Czech threw away his Iron Cross and was expelled from the region with his family as Germany's post-war borders were redrawn. He worked as a miner before eventually emigrating to West Germany. He purchased another Iron Cross and had a framed photograph of himself with Hitler, appearing on several TV programs until his death in 2011, aged 78. Willi Hübner settled in Landshut in Bavaria after the war and became a mechanic. He appeared in several television documentaries as well, including the famous The World at War series. Hübner died in April 2010 at the age of 81. As for Erwin Scheidewig, he appeared on a Dutch television documentary on the Hitler Youth in 1973, but whether he is still alive is not known. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share. You can also visit